In this video, you will see how to model slanted and tapered walls, and we'll learn how to apply variable thickness to a wall layer to enable it to taper in the model. I have the exercise file, Slanted and Tapered Walls, open. Looking at the walls around the tower of this project, currently they are vertical, but as a design feature, we would like the walls to slope outwards as they rise up the tower. So to achieve this, we'll select the walls around the outside of the tower, so holding down the control key whilst picking the walls to multiple select all of them. And now, looking in the Properties palette, we have the Cross-Section Definition panel, and we can see the cross-section is currently set to vertical. So from the drop-down list, I'll change this to be slanted. Then beneath this, we have the angle from vertical, which is currently 0 degrees. So let's change this from 0 to be 10 degrees. Now I'll move my mouse back over the view to apply those settings. And we can now see all of the walls that we had selected around the tower are slanted by 10 degrees and are sloping outwards as they rise up the tower. This looks a little bit too extreme, so let's change that slant angle to 5 degrees and see how that looks. And I think it needs to be somewhere in between, so let's set the angle to 8 degrees. And yes, this looks good, so we'll leave it at 8 degrees, and this will be a good design feature for our project. To show how we can control this slant a bit more, we'll open up the section view pond section. And looking at the wall to the right of the view that's containing the pond water, we'll select this wall, and in the Properties palette, we'll change its cross-section to slanted. And then we'll change the angle from vertical to 5 degrees and then apply this to the wall. And we can see that it slants inwards towards the water. So now we'll go back to the Properties palette and we'll change it to a -5 degrees. And we can see that that now slants outwards. So using positive or negative numbers will control the direction in which the wall slants. Looking in the view, we can see that we have temporary dimensions and a grip at the top of the wall that we can use to control the slant angle too. So for example, if we click on the temporary dimension and change its value here, so let's set this to be -10 degrees, and we can see that adjust as it would do as if we were changing it in the Properties palette. Alternatively, we could just drag the control at the top of the wall, which will adjust the angle and be a bit more interactive in the model when doing so. In this situation, a slanted wall wouldn't really be appropriate, and it would be better if the inside face of the wall by the water remained vertical and the external face sloped out to get thicker towards the bottom of the wall. So with the wall selected, we'll go back to the Properties palette, and from the cross-section parameter, we'll change it from slanted to tapered. However, we now have a warning message telling us that we need to assign a variable thickness to one of the layers in the wall type in order for it to taper. So we'll click Close, and then we'll change the cross-section definition back to vertical on this wall. And then from the top of the Properties palette, we'll click Edit Type to access the wall's type properties. Now we need to click the Edit button next to the Structure parameter to access the wall assembly. And we can see the layers that make up the wall. So we have granite tiles either side of a central concrete structural layer. We can see this reflected in the preview. Thinking about how this wall type would slope and get thicker, it would be the concrete layer that we would want to change, and the granite tiles would maintain their current thickness of 2 inches. Looking at the list of layers, the last column on the right hand side is titled Variable, and we can check the box for the concrete layer to enable that to be variable. We can only have one variable thickness layer within a wall type, so if I check it for one of the other layers, the lower granite tile layers here, we can see that the concrete one unchecks itself. I'll check the concrete one once more, and we can see that the other layer is now no longer set to be variable. And that's all we need to do in here, so click OK to save these changes. Now, back in the type properties, we can see we've got the cross-section definition panel that's been added to the parameters. In here, we have the default exterior and interior angle, so I'll set the exterior angle to be 5 degrees. And we also have a parameter to define where the width of the wall is measured at, so this allows us to choose the fixed width point of the wall for when we set the taper value. So looking up here, we can see that the wall is just 1 foot thick. And by choosing the top option for this parameter, it will remain 1 foot thick at the top of the wall, and therefore any variation will occur towards the bottom of the wall. So click OK now to save and apply these changes to the model. And the wall is still selected in the view, and we can see that we have a dimension indicating the 1 foot width at the top of the wall. And it hasn't tapered yet, as we need to change its cross-section parameters. So in the Properties palette, we'll change it from vertical to tapered, and we can see the default exterior angle below this, and when we apply it, we can see the exterior face of the wall tapering out at the default 5 degrees. And also, we can see the top of the wall remains 1 foot thick, as indicated by the dimension here. So with the wall selected, at the bottom of the wall, we can see that we have the drag control and the temporary dimension here to be able to control the angle of the taper. So if I just drag the control point here, as soon as I let go, we'll be prompted with a choice, because we're effectively going to change the default that's set in the type properties. So we can either cancel this and leave it set as the type properties, or we can create an instance override, which is what we'll do. And then looking in the properties of the wall here, we can see that the enable angle overrides is checked, and the exterior angle shows the angle that we dragged the grip to, and we'll keep updating as we interactively edit it within the view. And we can also edit the temporary dimension in the view to update those taper angles. So I'll now uncheck the enable angle overrides in the properties, and this will set the wall back to the default in the type properties. And we can see that updated in the view, and the exterior angle now in the properties palette being greyed out. And then we'll swap back to the 3D view. And looking at the walls that surround the pond here, we can see the one we've edited with the exterior tapering out. We'll select the return wall here and change its cross-section parameter to be tapered. And we'll leave that as the default settings of 5 degrees. And now where the two wall joins in the corner, we can see a nice mitered join with the taper being applied to both walls.